On the Drachnid homeworld, their high command watched in disbelief as centuries of dominance crumbled before this new way of warfare. Their mighty dreadnoughts, once the terror of the galaxy, found themselves outmaneuvered by smaller, more agile ships. The end came not with a massive explosion or a heroic last stand, but with a transmission. The Drachnid Empire, facing complete defeat, surrendered for the first time in its history. As the news spread across the galaxy, Admiral Park stood in Earth's orbital shipyard, watching as the next generation of vessels took shape. These ships were neither purely human nor coalition in design, but something new, a fusion of both civilizations' best qualities. "We never sought to conquer the stars," he said to the young officers gathered around him. "We simply wanted to understand them. And in doing so, we changed how the galaxy itself thinks about warfare." The victory brought more than peace, it brought understanding. The coalition had learned that technological superiority alone wasn't enough. Humanity had shown that innovation and adaptability were just as important as raw power. As the sun rose over Earth, casting its light on the ships departing for distant stars, Park smiled. The galaxy had indeed underestimated humanity's potential, but that underestimation had led to something remarkable, a new dawn for all spacefaring civilizations. The stars no longer seemed distant or unreachable. They had become humanity's new home, and their light shone brighter for the changes humanity had brought to the cosmic dance of civilization. Victory wasn't just about having the biggest guns, Park thought. Sometimes it was about knowing when to fire them. And more importantly, knowing how to think differently about using them. As he watched the ships depart, he knew that humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy wasn't their weapons or tactics, but their ability to see possibilities where others saw only limitations. The cosmos would never be the same, and that was exactly as it should be. Through the reinforced glass of the observation deck, Admiral Taiwan Park watched Earth grow smaller in the distance. The blue marble that humanity called home seemed so fragile from here, wrapped in its delicate atmosphere and scattered white clouds. His weathered hands clasped behind his back, knuckles white with tension, as he contemplated the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. The ES of Aurora represented humanity's greatest achievement, their first true interstellar vessel. While previous ships had ventured to Mars and established bases on the Moon, the Aurora was different. Its experimental fusion drive would allow it to reach speeds that would have seemed impossible just a decade ago. "Admiral, engineering reports all systems are functioning at optimal levels," reported Lieutenant Seo at his side. The young officer's voice carried barely contained excitement, matching the electric atmosphere that permeated the entire ship. Park nodded, his reflection grim in the transparent barrier that separated them from the vacuum of space. "Tell Chief Engineer Yoon that I want another check on the containment fields. We can't afford any mistakes." As Seo hurried away, Park allowed himself a small smile. The crew's enthusiasm reminded him of his own younger days in the Space Force. But now, at 58, he carried the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. The Aurora wasn't just a ship. It was a statement to the cosmos that humanity was ready to take its place among the stars. Unknown to Park and his crew, they were being watched. In the outer reaches of the solar system, 3 cloaked vessels hung motionless relative to the sun. Their advanced stealth technology made them completely invisible to Earth's detection systems. Inside the lead ship, High Commander Kyung Han of the Galactic Coalition paced the bridge. His tall, slender frame cast shifting shadows in the soft blue lighting that his species preferred. The other officers of his species watched him with their characteristic four-eyed gaze, waiting for his decision. "The humans are progressing faster than our models predicted," stated his science officer, Ra-Min. "Their fusion drive design is crude, but the underlying principles are sound. They've independently developed concepts that took other species centuries to master." Kyung Han paused his pacing to study the holographic display, showing the Aurora's energy signature. "What is your assessment of their success probability?" "Their safety margins are wider than necessary," Ra-Min replied. "Inefficient, but safer than expected. I estimate a 78% chance of successful transit to their target star. This was the moment Kyung-han had dreaded. Coalition protocols were clear. Pre-FTL civilizations were to be left alone until they independently achieved interstellar travel. But these humans worried him. They developed technology too quickly, adapted too readily, and showed an alarming aptitude for turning peaceful innovations into weapons. "Commander," his communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a priority message from Coalition Command. The Drachnid Empire has launched another offensive in the Proxima sector. 3 colony worlds are under attack." Kyung-han's secondary heart began beating faster, a sign of stress in his species. The timing couldn't be worse. The Coalition fleet was stretched thin trying to contain Drachnid expansion. They needed every ship, but protocol demanded they maintain observation of Earth during this crucial moment. Back aboard the Aurora, Park reviewed the final launch checklist. The ship hummed with power as the fusion drive warmed up. 5,000 souls aboard, the best and brightest Earth had to offer. Scientists, soldiers, colonists, all volunteers, all aware of the risks. "Admiral," called out Captain Jin from her station, "we're detecting unusual energy readings at the edge of our sensor range. They appeared for just a moment before vanishing." Park frowned. They'd picked up similar anomalies during testing, but the source remained a mystery. Some of his scientists theorized they were detecting traces of advanced stealth technology, but that seemed far-fetched. Humanity couldn't be ready to meet alien civilizations yet, could they? In his observation ship, Kyung-han made his decision. "We maintain our position and continue observation. The humans must face this test alone." Even as he spoke the words, he felt uncertainty gnaw at him. The Coalition needed help against the Drachnids, but involving an unpredictable species like humans could change the balance of power in dangerous ways. The Aurora's engines flared to life, a controlled inferno of fusion power. Park felt the subtle vibration through his boots as humanity's greatest achievement prepared for its first real test. They would attempt to reach Proxima Centauri, Earth's nearest stellar neighbor. If successful, it would open a new chapter in human history. "All stations report ready," announced Captain Jin. "Awaiting your command, Admiral." Park took one last look at Earth, knowing that if they succeeded, nothing would ever be the same. Humanity would become an interstellar species, ready to face whatever waited for them among the stars. Unknown to them, that moment would come sooner than anyone expected. "Begin launch sequence," Park ordered, his voice steady despite the historic weight of the moment. "Let's show the universe what humanity can do." As the Aurora began its historic journey, neither its crew nor the watching Coalition observers could have predicted how humanity's first steps into the cosmos would reshape the galaxy. Within weeks, this ship and its crew would find themselves thrust into an interstellar war that had raged for centuries. But for now, they focused on the monumental task before them, proving that humanity could reach the stars. The watching Coalition ships recorded everything, their crews torn between duty and the growing realization that they might be witnessing the emergence of a species that could change everything. As the Aurora's engines reached full power, Kyung-han made a final log entry. "May our descendants forgive us if we have made the wrong choice today." The great ship accelerated away from Earth, carrying humanity's dreams with it. Behind them, their world grew smaller, unaware that its destiny was about to become entangled with a conflict that would reshape the galaxy. The age of Earth's isolation was ending, and the cosmos held its breath to see what these newcomers would bring to the great dance of civilizations among the stars. Red lights flashed across the bridge of the ESS Aurora as Captain Jae-young Lee's hands gripped her command chair. The ship's sensors had picked up something no one had expected to find at Proxima Centauri: the clear signatures of an ongoing space battle. "Multiple energy readings at bearing 040, reported Tactical Officer Da-hyun Kim, his fingers dancing across his console. "The signatures don't match anything in our database, Captain. These are definitely not human vessels." The Aurora's bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, but Lee could sense their underlying tension. They had trained for first contact scenarios, but no one had expected it to happen in the middle of what appeared to be a war. "Show me," Lee ordered, and the main view screen lit up with a tactical display. Dozens of ships filled the space around Proxima Centauri, their energy weapons painting lines of fire across the void. Two distinct groups were clearly visible, one retreating in what appeared to be a defensive formation, the other pressing the attack with ruthless efficiency. "I'm picking up distress signals," Communications Officer Han reported, her voice tight with concentration. "They're using some kind of universal mathematical language. Captain, I think I can decode it." Lee nodded, her mind racing through their options. The Aurora wasn't designed for combat. It was an exploration vessel with minimal defensive capabilities, but something about the attacking force sent chills down her spine. Their tactics spoke of cold brutality, targeting what appeared to be civilian vessels among their prey. "Message decoded," Han announced. It's a request for assistance. They're identifying themselves as coalition forces under attack by something called the Drachnid Empire." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity's first contact with alien life was happening in the worst possible way, in the middle of what appeared to be a massacre. "Tactical analysis," Lee demanded, turning to Kim. "The defending forces appear more technologically advanced, but they're outnumbered 3-1, Kim reported. "Their ships are larger than ours, but they're taking heavy damage. The attackers are using some kind of energy weapon we've never seen before." In the distance, one of the coalition ships exploded in a brilliant flash, its death illuminating the battlefield like a newborn star. Lee made her decision. "Battle stations," she ordered, and klaxons began to sound throughout the Aurora. "Engineering, give me everything you can from the fusion drive." "Tactical, ready all defensive systems." "Captain," her first officer protested, "we're not equipped for this kind of engagement. Our mission was exploration, not combat." Lee's eyes remained fixed on the tactical display. "Our mission was to represent humanity among the stars. I won't let our first act in the galaxy be standing by while we watch a massacre." The Aurora surged forward, its experimental fusion drive pushing it to speeds that made the Coalition observers' jaws drop. Commander Kyung, who had followed the human ship to Proxima Centauri, watched in disbelief as the tiny vessel accelerated directly toward the heart of the battle. "Their ship is barely the size of a Coalition corvette," one of his officers noted in amazement. "What do they think they can accomplish?" But the humans had a plan. Lee had noticed something about the Drachnid formation. They were fighting in rigid, predictable patterns. Like many advanced civilizations, they had come to rely too heavily on their superior technology. "Helm, plot an attack vector through their center," Lee ordered. "Engineering, prepare to vent plasma on my mark." "Tactical, ready the point defense systems for wide dispersion mode." The Aurora dove into the battle like a knife through silk. Its smaller size, which should have been a disadvantage, made it an incredibly difficult target for the Drachnid gunners. Their targeting systems were calibrated for the larger coalition ships, and the human vessels' erratic, unpredictable movements confused their tracking algorithms. "Now," Lee commanded as they passed through the enemy formation. The Aurora vented superheated plasma from its fusion drive directly into the path of 3 Drachnid cruisers. The energy release overwhelmed their shields, and the coalition forces seized the opportunity to concentrate their fire on the suddenly vulnerable ships. The battle's momentum shifted. The Aurora's unconventional tactics had broken the Drachnid formation, and the coalition ships rallied. Lee's crew worked with desperate efficiency, using their ship's maneuverability to stay one step ahead of the enemy's superior weapons. "Coalition forces are advancing," Kim reported with barely contained excitement. "The Drachnids are falling back to regroup." On his observation ship, Commander Kyung made a decision that would change galactic history. He dropped his vessel's cloak and opened a channel to the Aurora. "Human vessel," his translated message came through clear on the Aurora's bridge. "This is Commander Kyung of the Galactic Coalition. Your assistance is unexpected but greatly appreciated. Stand by for coordination data. Lee allowed herself a small smile as tactical information began flowing into their computers. Humanity's first official contact with alien life might have come in the middle of a battle, but they had proven themselves worthy of notice. The combined human and coalition forces pressed their advantage. The Aurora's unconventional tactics proved devastating when coordinated with the coalition's superior firepower. Within hours, the Drachnid fleet was in full retreat, leaving behind a battlefield that marked the beginning of a new era for humanity. As the adrenaline of battle faded, Lee looked around her bridge at her exhausted but proud crew. They had come seeking peaceful first contact, and found war instead. But in choosing to fight for what they believed was right, they had shown the galaxy something it had never seen before: humanity's unique combination of innovation, courage, and moral conviction. The cosmos would never be the same, and neither would humanity. As coalition ships moved to rendezvous with the Aurora, Lee knew they had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. The galaxy had just learned that humanity was a force to be reckoned with, and the ripples of this battle would echo across the stars for centuries to come. Science Officer Sun Mi Kang stared at the holographic display floating above the Coalition battleship's engineering bay, her mind racing with possibilities. Around her, alien technology far more advanced than anything humanity had created hummed with power, but she saw something the Coalition engineers had missed. The problem isn't in the power output, she explained to Coalition engineer Hejun Choi, who watched her with 4 curious eyes. It's in how you're using it. Look at the energy flow patterns. Kang pulled up the schematics of the Coalition's main weapon systems. For 3 days, since the Battle of Proxima Centauri, she had been studying their technology, and something about their approach seemed fundamentally inefficient. We designed our fusion drives to be adaptable, she continued, manipulating the hologram with gestures that still felt awkward to her. On the Aurora, we can vent plasma in controlled bursts, not just for propulsion but as a defensive measure. What if we applied the same principle to your weapon systems? Choi's facial tentacles twitched with interest. An expression Kang had learned meant excitement in his species. Explain further, he said, his translator making his words clear but keeping the musical undertones of his native language. Kang brought up the data from the Aurora's battle performance. Your ships are powerful, but they're predictable. The Drachnids have adapted to your attack patterns over centuries. But look what happened when we introduced chaos into the equation. The hologram showed the Aurora's movements during the battle, darting between larger ships, using its size and speed to disrupt enemy formations. Choi's secondary eyes widened as he began to understand. You're suggesting we modify our entire combat doctrine, he said, but there was no dismissal in his tone, only growing interest. Over the next several hours, Kang and Choi worked together, combining human ingenuity with coalition technology. Their first breakthrough came when they successfully modified a coalition cruiser's weapon systems to incorporate the Aurora's plasma venting technique. The Drachnid shields are calibrated for focused energy weapons, Kang explained to the gathered coalition admirals later that day. They never considered they might face weapons that disperse their energy in unpredictable patterns. It's like trying to block a solid punch versus a splash of water. The initial tests exceeded all expectations. The modified weapons reduced shield effectiveness by 60%, but it was Kang's next suggestion that truly revolutionized coalition warfare. We need to make your ships dance, she told them, earning confused looks from the alien officers. Humanity learned warfare on a planet's surface, where terrain and movement matter as much as firepower. Space is 3-dimensional. We should use that. Under Kang's guidance, coalition ships began practicing maneuvers that would have seemed insane just weeks before. The massive vessels learned to spin on their axes while firing, creating spiral patterns of energy that overwhelmed Drachnid targeting systems. They adapted human naval tactics to space, using their size to screen smaller vessels that could dart in for precision strikes. It's not about having the biggest guns, Kang explained to a particularly skeptical coalition commander. It's about using what you have in ways your enemy doesn't expect. The real test came 3 weeks after the Battle of Proxima Centauri. A Drachnid battle group attacked a coalition supply line, expecting an easy victory. Instead, they found themselves facing ships that moved like dancers, their weapons creating patterns that turned space itself into a weapon. From the bridge of the Lid coalition ship, Kang watched as their modified vessels executed their new battle plans perfectly. The Drachnids, expecting the usual head-on engagement, found themselves caught in a three-dimensional ballet of destruction. Their shields, designed to block direct energy weapons, provided little protection against the scattered, unpredictable attacks. Coalition Command is requesting immediate transmission of all battle data, Choi reported, his voice carrying unmistakable pride. They'd never seen anything like this. The victory was total, and more importantly, achieved with minimal coalition casualties. Word spread quickly through the coalition fleet. The humans had changed the rules of space combat. In the weeks that followed, Kang and Choi's collaboration led to more innovations. They developed fighter squadrons based on Earth's air combat tactics, created new shield configurations that could adapt to different threat patterns, and even found ways to use the natural phenomena of space to their advantage. But perhaps most importantly, they proved that the combination of human creativity and coalition technology was far more powerful than either alone. The Drachnids, who had fought the same enemy the same way for centuries, suddenly found themselves facing an opponent that rewrote the rules of engagement with every battle. As Kang stood in the coalition war room, watching the latest battle reports come in, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Humanity had brought more than just another fleet to this war. They had brought a new way of thinking, a perspective unbound by centuries of tradition and established doctrine. Your species continues to surprise us, Choi told her as they reviewed the data from another successful engagement. We had forgotten that sometimes the greatest weapon is not the one you hold, but the way you choose to use it. Kang smiled, remembering her early days in Earth's space program, when reaching the stars had seemed like an impossible dream. Now here she was, helping to reshape the way an interstellar civilization fought its wars. That's the thing about humans, she replied, making a small adjustment to their latest weapon design. We never stop looking for new ways to solve old problems. The stars seemed a little brighter that day, as though they too were watching to see what this young species would do next. The human factor, as the coalition began calling it, was changing the face of warfare in space, and this was only the beginning. Ambassador Yoon-hee Park stood before the towering doors of the Coalition Council chamber, taking a deep breath to steady her nerves. The massive hall had been designed to humble visitors, with ceilings that stretched hundreds of meters high and walls that seemed to glow with their own inner light. But Park had not come to be humbled. "The council will see you now," announced a coalition attendant, their crystalline form shimmering as they gestured toward the opening doors. Inside, representatives from 200 spacefaring civilizations watched as the human ambassador walked to the center of the chamber. Some floated in anti-gravity fields, others sat in environmental chambers filled with their native atmospheres, but all eyes were fixed on this representative of Earth. "Distinguished members of the council," Park began, her voice clear and strong. "I come before you today not just as humanity's voice, but as a messenger of grave news." The chamber grew silent. Over the past month, the coalition had learned to pay attention when humans spoke. Their intervention in the war had already changed the balance of power dramatically. 3 hours ago, Jin Ho-yoon, formerly of the Drachnid Diplomatic Corps, arrived on Earth with critical intelligence. Park paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. The Drachnid Empire is planning a massive retaliatory strike, not just against coalition worlds, but against Earth itself. Murmurs filled the chamber. The Drachnids had never targeted a pre-FTL civilization before. It went against all established rules of interstellar warfare. Meanwhile, on Earth, Director Sang-Min Lee of the Security Council sat in an underground bunker, reviewing the information provided by the Drachnid defector. Jin Ho-yoon sat across from him, his scaled skin reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights. "They will not follow conventional attack patterns," Yoon explained, his translator converting his sibilant speech to clear Korean. "The Empire has authorized the use of planet-killer weapons. They fear what humanity might become if allowed to develop further." Lee's face remained impassive, but his hands tightened on the desk. "Why did you choose to warn us?" he asked. "Because I have watched your species," Yoon replied. "You achieved in weeks what others could not in centuries. You fight differently, think differently. The Empire sees this as a threat. I see it as hope." Back in the Coalition Council chamber, Park was laying out humanity's response to the threat. "We do not ask for protection," she declared, causing surprised ripples through the assembly. "We ask for partnership. Earth's industries are already being converted for war production. Our scientists are adapting our technologies for space combat. We will fight." The Council's chief speaker, a being of pure energy contained within a mechanical shell, moved forward. "You understand that this will irrevocably change your society's development. There can be no return to isolation after this." "With respect," Park responded. "That choice was made the moment we decided to help your ships at Proxima Centauri. Humanity does not run from fights we believe in." On Earth, military bases around the globe hummed with activity. The plans Jin Ho-yoon had brought showed the Drachnids had underestimated human preparation time. They expected months to pass before Earth could mount any significant defense. They were wrong. Director Lee watched as the first of Earth's new orbital defense platforms rose into space, based on coalition technology, but modified with human innovations. They represented humanity's refusal to be easy prey. "Your people move with remarkable speed," Yoon observed, watching the launches from the bunker's monitors. "We've had practice," Lee replied grimly. "Our history is full of wars and the preparation for them. We hope to leave that behind in space, but it seems we'll need those skills again." In the council chamber, Park's presentation reached its conclusion. "We don't ask for your protection," she repeated, "but we do ask for your trust. Let us show you what humanity can do when we fight for our survival." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives argued for full military support of Earth, others for maintaining distance from the conflict. But all knew that the galaxy had changed. Humanity had emerged onto the cosmic stage, not as supplicants begging for protection, but as warriors ready to fight their own battles. "The Council will deliberate," the chief speaker announced. "But know this, your species has already earned our respect. Whatever we decide, that will not change." As Park left the chamber, her communicator buzzed with an update from Earth. The orbital defense grid was ahead of schedule. New weapons systems were being installed on civilian ships, converting them to combat vessels. Humanity was preparing for war with the same speed and innovation they had shown in their first space battle. In his bunker, Director Lee received the report from the council meeting. "It seems we've given them something to think about," he mused to Yoon. The Drachnid defector nodded. "The Empire expects you to beg for protection. Your choice to stand and fight. It will shock them more than any weapon could." Above Earth, the new defense platforms took their positions, their weapons charged and ready. Humanity had entered the galactic stage in the middle of a war, but they would face it as they had faced every challenge in their history, with determination, innovation, and the unwavering will to survive. The diplomatic shockwaves of Earth's stance would ripple through the galaxy for years to come. But for now, humanity focused on the immediate future, preparing for a war that would test not just their weapons and tactics, but their very right to exist among the stars. Ambassador Park's last words to the council hung in the air. "We come not as victims seeking shelter, but as allies ready to fight. The galaxy will learn that humanity does not bow to threats. We rise to meet them." Professor Min-seo Kim watched through the simulator's observation window as Lieutenant Do-hyun Park executed another impossible maneuver. The holographic battle space around his simulator pod lit up with theoretical weapon impacts, but Park's ship danced through them like water flowing around rocks. Remarkable, breathed Coalition scientist Kim Min-nam, her 4 eyes tracking the display with intense focus. He's using the stellar body's gravity to enhance his ship's turning radius. We never considered using natural phenomena as combat multipliers. The Joint Military Academy in Seoul had become a melting pot of human and alien military knowledge. What had started as a simple training facility had evolved into something unprecedented, a place where centuries of coalition space combat doctrine merged with humanity's fresh perspective on warfare. Lieutenant Park comes from a naval background, Kim explained, making notes as the simulation continued. He's treating space like an ocean, but in 3 dimensions. Look at how he's using the star's radiation pressure the way a sailing ship uses wind. The simulation showed Park's vessel diving through what would have been suicide zones in traditional space combat. But by treating the various gravitational forces and radiation fields as currents and winds, he was turning the very fabric of space into a tactical advantage. "Stop simulation," Nam called out. The holographic battlefield froze, and Park emerged from the pod, his flight suit dark with sweat despite the climate control. "Traditional naval warfare taught us to use our environment," Park explained as he joined them at the observation console. "Space isn't empty. It's full of forces we can use. The Coalition's ships are powerful enough to ignore these forces, but why ignore an advantage?" Kim pulled up the data from Park's run. The Coalition's traditional tactics rely on overwhelming force, their advanced technology allowing them to bypass many of the natural phenomena that human ships had to consider. But Park's approach showed how these very limitations could become strengths. In another part of the Academy, human and Coalition engineers worked to modify ships with this new doctrine in mind. Coalition vessels were being redesigned with more maneuverable configurations, while human ships received upgraded sensors to better detect and utilize spatial phenomena. "The Drachnids won't expect this," Nam said, her translator adding subtle harmonics of excitement to her voice. "They fought the same way for so long, they'd forgotten that space itself can be a weapon." Kim watched as the next group of pilots entered the simulators. Each one brought their own background. Aircraft pilots, submarine commanders, even some from ground forces. Each contributed a unique perspective on how to fight in 3-dimensional space. "Your species adapts so quickly," Nam observed. "We spent centuries perfecting our space combat techniques, but you're rewriting them in weeks." "We have to," Kim replied. "Earth doesn't have centuries. We either adapt or we die." The breakthrough came during the 4th week of training. Park was running a simulation of submarine warfare tactics against a Coalition instructor's ship when something unexpected happened. By combining the stealth techniques of submarine warfare with the Coalition's advanced sensor technology, he managed to hide his ship in plain sight. "It's like hiding in the sun's glare," Park explained afterward, his eyes bright with excitement. "Old naval captains used to position themselves so the sun would blind their opponents. We can do the same thing with radiation fields, gravitational distortions, even the quantum foam of space itself." The implications were staggering. Coalition ships had always relied on their superior technology for stealth, but Park's approach turned natural phenomena into cover and concealment. When combined with Coalition tech, it made ships nearly impossible to detect until they were ready to strike. "We need to standardize this," Nam declared. "Every Coalition ship should be trained in these techniques." The Academy became a hive of activity as new training protocols were developed. Kim and Nam worked around the clock, combining their knowledge to create a new form of space combat doctrine. Traditional Coalition tactics were merged with human naval warfare, creating something entirely new. "It's not just about the technology," Kim explained to a group of Coalition officers. "It's about how we think about space itself. Every gravitational well becomes terrain to use. Every radiation field becomes weather to exploit. We're not just flying through space, we're swimming in it." The results were immediate and dramatic. In simulated battles, ships using the new combined tactics consistently outperformed those using traditional methods. The coalition's technology, when applied with human tactical innovation, became exponentially more effective. The Drachnids have never faced anything like this, Nam said as they watched another successful training run. They expect brute force encounters. They won't be prepared for ships that fight like this. As the day's training sessions ended, Kim stood at the Academy's observation deck, watching the sunset over Seoul. Below, human and alien instructors walked together, discussing the day's lessons. The sight filled her with hope. Humanity had reached the stars expecting to find wonders, and instead found war. But perhaps they had also found something else, a way to bring new perspectives to a galaxy grown stagnant with tradition. Tomorrow's session will focus on asteroid field tactics, Park said, joining her at the window. I've been studying old privateer warfare patterns. I think we can adapt them for space. Kim nodded, smiling. The knowledge exchange was no longer one-sided. The coalition brought their technology and experience, but humanity brought innovation and fresh perspectives. Together, they were creating something neither civilization could have developed alone. As night fell over the Academy, the stars became visible above. Somewhere out there, the Drachnid Empire was preparing for war, confident in their understanding of how space combat worked. They didn't realize that the rules of the game were about to change, transformed by the unlikely partnership of two civilizations learning from each other. The future remained uncertain, but one thing was clear. The galaxy would never be the same after humanity showed it new ways to dance among the stars. A massive fleet hung in the darkness near Arcturus, its ships arrayed in a formation unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. At its heart, Fleet Commander Hai-Jin Song stood on the bridge of the flagship Stellar Dawn, a hybrid vessel that combined coalition technology with human design principles. Drachnid fleet approaching from Vector 317, reported her sensor officer. 500 ships and counting. They're using their standard assault formation. Song allowed herself a small smile. The Drachnid's predictability would be their undoing today. Months of preparation had led to this moment, and she had a surprise waiting for them. Signal Captain O, she ordered. Begin shadow strike deployment. Throughout the fleet, smaller vessels began moving into position. These ships, commanded by Captain Jo-woo-oh, were the product of months of tactical innovation. Painted with light-absorbing materials and modified with coalition stealth technology, they were nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. Remember, O's voice came through the fleet-wide channel. We fight like water, not stone. Flow through their defenses, strike where they're weak, and vanish before they can respond. The shadow strike technique was O's brainchild, born from studying ancient Earth guerrilla warfare tactics. The concept was simple but revolutionary, using small, agile ships to exploit gaps in enemy formations that larger vessels couldn't penetrate. The Drachnid fleet approached with typical arrogance, their massive dreadnoughts leading the charge. They had faced coalition forces for centuries and thought they knew every possible strategy. They were wrong. Shadow Group, execute Pattern Delta, Song commanded. The battle began. At first, the Drachnids didn't realize anything was wrong. Their sensors showed only the main coalition human fleet, arrayed in what appeared to be a standard defensive formation. Then O's shadow ships struck. Emerging from the cover of Arcturus's radiation field, the strike vessels darted between the Drachnid ships like schools of fish through a coral reef. Their modified weapons, designed to exploit weaknesses in Drachnid shield harmonics, tore through defenses that had stood strong for centuries. Multiple impacts confirmed, O reported, his voice steady despite the chaos of battle. Enemy shields failing in sectors 7 through 12. The Drachnids attempted to respond, but their rigid command structure worked against them. By the time orders reached their ships, the shadow strike vessels had already moved to new positions, leaving confusion and damaged vessels in their wake. Main fleet, advance, Song ordered. The larger ships moved forward, their weapons finding easy targets in the disorganized Drachnid formation. Coalition energy weapons combined with human tactical innovations created patterns of fire that the enemy couldn't predict or counter. "They're trying to regroup," her tactical officer warned. "Drachnid reinforcements approaching from the system's edge." Song nodded. "Just as we expected." "Captain O, execute Phase 2. The Shadow Strike ships regrouped with incredible precision, forming fluid patterns that seemed to defy traditional space combat logic. They moved like a school of fish, each ship's actions perfectly coordinated with the others, creating chaos in the enemy ranks. "I don't understand." A Drachnid commander's frustrated transmission was intercepted. "How are they moving like that? It's impossible." But it wasn't impossible, it was simply different. The human concept of naval warfare, combined with coalition technology, had created something entirely new. The Drachnids, for all their power, had no defense against an enemy that fought like water instead of steel. "Enemy flagship is isolated," O reported. "Moving to engage." Song watched as the Shadow Strike vessels swarmed the massive Drachnid command ship. They struck from multiple angles, their attacks synchronized to overwhelm its defenses. The mighty vessel, pride of the Drachnid fleet, found itself helpless against opponents it could barely target. "Drachnid fleet showing signs of retreat," her tactical officer announced. "They're breaking formation." For the first time in centuries, a Drachnid battle group was being routed. Their rigid hierarchy collapsed as individual ships, unable to receive coherent orders, began to withdraw. "Do not pursue," Song ordered as some coalition ships moved to give chase. "Let them run. They'll carry the message back to their empire. The rules of war have changed." The Battle of Arcturus lasted less than 6 hours, but its impact would echo through the galaxy for generations. The Drachnid Empire, which had terrorized space for centuries, had been defeated not by superior technology or numbers, but by innovation and adaptation. As the fleet regrouped, Song received damage reports. Thanks to the Shadow Strike technique, their losses were minimal. The Drachnids, on the other hand, had lost nearly a third of their fleet. "Well done, Captain O," she transmitted to her protege. "Your Shadow Strike concept has proven itself beyond our highest expectations." O's reply was characteristic of his modest nature. "It was the crew's execution that made it work, Commander. We just showed them a new way to dance among the stars." As the adrenaline of battle faded, Song looked out at her fleet. Coalition ships flew in formation with human vessels, their crews working together with a unity that would have seemed impossible months ago. The battle had proved something vital, that humanity's martial experience, gained through millennia of warfare on Earth, could indeed translate to the infinite canvas of space. The stars seemed brighter somehow, as if they too were celebrating this turning point in galactic history. The Drachnid Empire had lost more than ships today. They had lost their aura of invincibility. The galaxy was changing, and humanity had helped catalyze that change. "All ships, form up for return to base," Song ordered. "We've made history today, but this is just the beginning." The joint fleet moved away from Arcturus, leaving behind debris that would serve as a monument to this pivotal battle. The war wasn't over, but its course had been irrevocably altered. Humanity had proven itself not just capable of surviving among the stars, but of reshaping how wars were fought in their endless depths. Supreme Commander Taiyan Cho stood motionless before the holographic display of the Drachnid home system. The culmination of years of war floated before him. Thousands of ships from both the Coalition and Earth gathered for one final push into the heart of the Drachnid Empire. "The strike formations are in position," reported Strategic Director Jiayun Yang, her voice carrying the weight of countless battles. "All ships report ready for the jump." This was the moment that would define humanity's place in the cosmos. After years of fighting alongside the Coalition, after countless innovations and sacrifices, they were about to attempt what no civilization had managed in over 1,000 years, a direct assault on the Drachnid homeworld. "Begin the operation," Cho commanded. Across the vast fleet, jump drives engaged simultaneously. Space itself seemed to fold as hundreds of ships, human and coalition alike, made the final leap into history. They emerged into chaos. The Drachnids had fortified their home system with everything they had, turning it into a maze of defensive platforms and minefields. But Yang had anticipated this, had planned for it. "Execute Pattern Omega," she ordered. The fleet split apart like mercury scattered across glass, breaking into smaller groups that moved with fluid grace through the defensive grid. This was humanity's gift to space warfare, the ability to adapt, to flow like water around obstacles rather than smashing through them. Enemy fleet responding, the tactical officer reported. They're moving to engage. But the Drachnids found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to behave as expected. Coalition ships, once rigid and predictable in their tactics, now moved with human unpredictability. Smaller vessels darted between capital ships like schools of fish, their shadow strike techniques refined to perfection. Second wave commenced the Typhoon Maneuver, Cho ordered. This was Yang's masterpiece, a battle plan that turned the enemy's own defenses against them. As the fleet moved, it created artificial gravity wells, turning the carefully arranged Drachnid defensive positions into a trap of their own making. From his observation post on Earth, Admiral Ta-1 Park watched the battle unfold through real-time data streams. His weathered face showed pride as he saw how far humanity had come from their first tentative steps into space. The battle raged for hours, a dance of light and shadow across the stars. Human ingenuity combined with coalition technology created patterns of attack that the Drachnids couldn't counter. Their rigid hierarchy, once their strength, became their weakness as they struggled to adapt to rapidly changing situations. Their central command structure is faltering, Yang reported, allowing herself a small smile. They can't coordinate their responses fast enough. The Drachnid Empire had ruled through fear and superior technology for centuries. But they had never faced an enemy that thought like humans, an enemy that saw limitations as opportunities, that turned weakness into strength. Final phase, Cho commanded. All ships, execute Operation Sunrise. The combined fleet moved as one, implementing a strategy that would have seemed impossible just years ago. Ships dove through gaps in the Drachnid defenses, using gravitational forces to slingshot around planets and moons. Each vessel became part of a greater whole, creating a web of fire and motion that couldn't be predicted or countered.